Recording in progress.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to have you here today at KHD, Congregation of the Way. Parashah Tetze, when you go. Justice for women in God's covenant. This Torah portion contains more than 70 of the 613 commandments. It contains law about war, marriage, justice, and treatment of people in society. Ancient Israel, a patriarchal society where the rights of women were limited. However, God's laws brought justice, protection, and dignity to vulnerable people, including women. It is essential to remember that while these laws were given in a specific time and place, they reveal deeper principles about God's justice and care for all his people, especially the marginalized. In this case, I would like to speak about justice for the captive and married woman. Devarim 21:10 through 14 discusses the treatment of a female captive in war. Though she was a prisoner, God's law required she be treated with dignity if taken as a wife. Suppose you see among the captive a beautiful woman, and you desire her and would like to take her as a wife for yourself. Then you are to bring her into your house, and she must shave her head, trim her nails, and remove her captive's clothing. Then sit in your house and weep for her father and mother a full month. After that, you may go to her and become her husband, and she will be your wife. Now, if you are not pleased with her, then you may send her off, whatever she wishes. Give her whatever she wishes, but you must certainly not sell her for silver. You may not treat her as a merchandise, since you have humiliated her. Some commentators mention it, that the waiting period given to the soldiers was only so they could lose interest in this captive woman, because she was not an Israelite woman. During a time of war, women out of Israel were dressed seductively to trap soldiers. So if she was unattractive enough, he could let her go and avoid intermarriage. If after this period he still wanted to be with her, it is better to intermarry and be with a foreigner than you to treat this woman as a sex slave. So the Torah prevented the mistreatment of captive women by giving them a period of mourning and ensuring that they couldn't be treated as property, but must be respected as wife. The men couldn't just simply discard or sell her if he lost interest in her. This woman loses regardless of the outcome. She's taken captive, made herself unattractive, and after 30 days, he's destined to most likely to stay with her capturer, and probably she doesn't even want to be with him or remain with him at all. And just as a reminder, because here we mention sex in this Torah portion. It's a lot going on about men wanting a woman, men laying with a woman, men fighting with a woman, and woman not screaming. And as a reminder, we can pray most of the commandments, except those against idolatry, sexual immorality, and murder. So let me talk now about the married woman. Devarim 22:13 to 21. Suppose a man takes a wife and goes to her and then dislikes her, accuses her of shameful things, and gives her a bad reputation by saying, I took this woman, but then I came near her and didn't find her virginity. Then the father of the young woman is to take her and to bring Then the father of the young woman is to take her and her mother, is to bring the signs that the young woman's virginity to the city elders at the gate. The young lady's father is to tell the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as a wife, but he hates her. Indeed, he has accused her of a shameful thing, saying, I didn't find your daughter's virginity. Yet, these are signs of my daughter's virginity. They are to spread the wedding cloth before the elders of the city. The elders of the city are to take the man and punish him. Then they are to fine him with 100 pieces of silver and give them to the father of the young woman, because he had brought an evil name on a virgin of Israel. Then she is to be his wife. He may not send her away all his days. But if this thing is true, that the sign of virginity were now found in the young lady, then they are to bring the young woman out to the door of her father's gate, and the men of her city are to stone her to death, because she has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, to behave like a prostitute in her father's house. So you are to purge the evil from your midst. At the time of her wedding, the woman was supposed to be a virgin. After the marriage was consummated, her husband can make a claim like this. Of course, she was not a virgin, or because perhaps she didn't like her. There was a lot of arranged marriage back in the day. We learn that the man may be motivated by hatred toward his wife, and that he could be taking up these false accusations. The husband makes a claim to the elders of the community, and that the parents supply evidence to disprove his claim. The husband is either found guilty and then punished for this accusation, or if the husband's claims are true, because proof of the wife's virginity couldn't be found, then she is punished by being stoned to death. While in this case, if the one that slanders the other, they should be an equal punishment. He brought shame into this man's house, the father of the bride, but he's punished just by paying money away. Although these passages may seem harsh or difficult to understand by modern standards, they provide an opportunity to reflect on the cultural context, the role of women, and God's call for justice and dignity for all. Women had different rights back then. Women didn't have much of a voice. It's like you had to have a representative, like you have to have somebody, a male figure. The father and mother are made responsible for proving their daughter's virginity, and they shall spread out the wedding cloth before the elders of the town. The parents are responsible for providing this evidence of bleeding from the first intercourse that causes the breaking of the hymen. What if she was a virgin and didn't bleed at all? Could this be the only evidence that keeps this woman from being stoned to death? As you know, some groups still practice this until today. We see this a lot in the Orthodox movement, Jewish Orthodox movement, super Orthodox. We see this today. But what a shame. You know, we have the example also of Miriam and Yeshua. You know, she got pregnant. That's another topic to take, but it's the comparison of the time. You know, Miriam could have been stoned to death because she got pregnant. But there are groups until this day that they take that to heart. In so many groups, this is why they choose to marry them young. Also know, marrying a child, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, and then wait until they grow a bit more. So for sure they're virgins. This is a disgrace. A child should be a child and no use as an object. Regardless of the sex, boy or girl, a child always should remain a child and enjoy childhood. And women, girls, should grow before they can have any. You know what I mean. I cannot even say it because it's just a disgrace. This woman, daughter, wife, loses regardless of the outcome. She may be declared innocent by the evidence, but she doesn't receive any monetary reward. Our sages debate with the question of why the parents are the ones responsible for proving the daughter's virginity. And Devarim 22:19 or Deuteronomy tells us that the wife's father received the 100 pieces of silver from the husbands because her reputation was damaged. The reasoning is that the father would be the one truly disgraced because the community would assume that he didn't raise a virtuous daughter. And so he receives back double the bride price established for virgins in Israel. The father may have other daughters to marry, and if the community has any doubt, he might not find a good match for his unwed daughters. Therefore, the father received a monetary compensation. So the accused woman, and now proven innocent, has his character forever somewhat damaged. And for all her innocence, she's granted the blessing to remain married with a man that tried to get rid of her. She shall remain his wife. He shall never have the right to send her away. Divorce her. Devarim 22:19. If the husband delights her so much, keeping her with him, how is this good for her? Here we need to step back and take a broader look of the culture of the time. The text can speak fully to us if we only allow ourselves in some historical context. Much of the book of Devarim is similar in style to the content to ancient Near Eastern law texts, the environment of this time. They considered women to be people of significantly lower status. The husband had full control of the women. He could take her as a wife. And if he didn't like her, he could get rid of her by saying, "You are not my wife," and then send her off. The book of Devarim reflects some of the innovations that were characteristic of the Israelite character of the time. I'm thinking a little bit like Israelites were a little more, they had more vision for women than people of the time. In this case, concern for women who were clearly underprivileged motivated the decision that the husband could get rid of her, therefore had to support her for the rest of his life. Of course, it is unfortunate that the wife is now granted the right to choose to stay or leave him. But this would be expecting too much innovation for that time. We can look for some advances in the rights of the wife in the text of the next development period of Jewish civilization, the rabbinic period. In the biblical period, a husband might pay a bride price to his wife's father, enjoy the wife's family, and work for them, as was the case of Jacob, Rachel, and Leah. Or the wife joined the husband's family, and the addition of their offspring economically benefit the husband's family, as we can see in the case of Ruth and Boaz. In either case, the woman was mostly viewed as the way by which the family increased their workforce by having children, especially male children. And in most cases, if the family could not bear children, the man could take another wife. We saw that as well in the Bible. We see then that the value of women in this society was closely linked to the power of reproduction in order to control the family and its financial future. Women were treated as a commodity with rights of exclusive ownership, passing from the father to the husband. In other groups, it was even passing to their son. And if you didn't have a son, you have to adopt one. But women didn't have much of a voice. Back then, a male figure, again, had to be a representative of a woman. And nowadays in society also, we see that. I remember, jokingly, I have a friend, and her husband used to have this bad habit of walking ahead of her. And she used to say, what, I have to walk behind you? And nowadays, we still see that. We see men walking in the front, women have to walk in the back. Women cannot even leave their houses without being accompanied by a man. In this patriarchal society, a strict control of women's sexuality ensured the continuation of the family-based social order. It was primarily the father's responsibility to control and protect the sexual purity. As a result, the procreation of the daughters. This translates into monetary value in the form of the bride price, not just for the individual's daughter in question, but also for the daughters of subsequent marrying age, and into family name value in the form of reputation and standing in good standing in the community. As we learn in the event of the daughter is found guilty, then shall bring the girl to the doorway of their father's house. The men of the town shall stone her to death, because she did a deplorable thing in the house of Israel, committing fornication in her father's house. The rabbis of the Talmudic period did progress to a somewhat more complex understanding of the role of women in society. Women were viewed less as objects and more as subjects in this new society. For example, in the case of rape, although the Bible provided only for the father receiving the bride price of 50 pieces of silver, Devarim 22:28-29, the rabbis demanded that the rapist must also compensate the woman for her physical and psychological damage. And although, according to our biblical texts, the rapist was pressured to marry the woman, under Talmudic law, the girl could refuse to marry the rapist. So we are moving forward here. Now let's jump to the new covenant, to Parashah. We see Yeshua uplifting women. Yeshua uplifts women and restored their dignity in ways that often went against cultural norms. Women were among his followers, participants in his ministry, and witness of his resurrection. Through Yeshua, we understand that all people, regardless of gender, have equal worth in the eyes of God. His ministry invites us to continue to honor, protect, and advocate women, ensuring that they are treated with dignity they deserve. Do you remember when Yeshua, when the men wanted to stone the women in the new covenant, in the Parashah? And Yeshua said, any one of you who are free of sin, throw the first stone. Go ahead, go with the first stone. Nobody is pure. Baruch Hashem. What an example. After all, God used a woman as a vessel for procreation. And we are all here, regardless, male or female. We have a closer relationship to a woman, regardless. So we know that that connection between a woman and a child lasts forever. Moving forward to the 20th century, the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution granted women the right to vote, passed by Congress on June 4th of 1919, and was ratified on August 18, 1920. The amendment states that the right to vote cannot be denied based on sex. The fight for women's vote was a long and difficult process that involved decades of protest and agitation. It's a very good about this. I don't remember the name from the top of my head, but it's an excellent movie here. Although the 19th Amendment protected women on paper, it didn't fully protect all women from discrimination. Minority groups continue to face discrimination for another 45 years until the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Talking about voting rights, as you may know, I wasn't born in the United States. I was born in a third world country. And even there, when you vote, you have to show an ID. And it's mandatory to vote, by the way. You have to vote. You need that paper that you have voted for anything that you may want to proceed with. A driver license, a passport, that you have voted that year if there was any election. So I don't understand. Until this day, I have been living in the US for a long time, and I don't understand why it's such an issue and it's not mandatory to vote here in the US with an ID. 36 states, if I'm not wrong, are requested to present the voter's ID. We have 14 states, if I'm not wrong, that do not require voter's ID. In those states, we have New York, California, and Pennsylvania, and so on, including Washington, D.C. I just don't get it. We should demand, actually, it should be put into law that each and every state requests a voter ID. And we should make it mandatory that each and every person should vote for. We had women fighting rights for women. So all of you who are here, especially my ladies, women in this Zoom, take advantage of that privilege. The women like you and me, who fought so hard over 100 years ago, please go and vote. Please encourage your friends and families to go and vote as if your life depends on it. I love the fact that we have gotten so far that we had a women candidate for the presidency back in 2016. And now we have another woman as a candidate in 2024. We are moving forward indeed. We are. And that's good. Very good. Before you vote, I just want to suggest something. Check the policies of the candidates that are running for the presidency in 2024. Check what they have accomplished in their life, in the public and the private sector. Check what they have done while in and out of office. Please check. Check the candidate that aligns more with your values. That aligns more with God's values. Also, keep in check that acts speak louder than a voice. Actions speak louder than words. And please do not think that you have to keep quiet for the sake of shalom, of peace. It is very important for you to go and check the candidate that is running for the presidency. Not to be perfect, not to be honorable, because God can use anybody, when He has a purpose in life. But my advice here is, as a believer in Yeshua, as a mother, to vote for that candidate, that his policies aligns with my values as a woman. Let's don't forget of the many, many, many women that do not have this privilege until this day. We are privileged to live in a free country. We have a lot of liberties. But it's still many, many bad things happening to women in these days. Like sex trafficking. Like thinking as women, as a second-class citizen. Let us pray for our country, the United States of America, to remain a good and free country under God. There is so much to talk about women and women's rights until this day. As we reflect on these laws, we see God's heart for justice and the protection of the vulnerable, including women. Though some of these laws in Tetze may seem distant from our modern context, they point to timeless principles: dignity, justice, and care for all people. And look how far we have become. Let us move forward. And yes, let us move forward indeed. But honoring the dignity of all women as part of God's creation and committing to live out His justice and mercy in every area of our lives. Shabbat Shalom.